Listen, I'm kind of surprised here. This must be right after JR left.
What a fucking look that your boy is sporting here. He's got the bald head, but he's got the ponytail in the back. He's got the Oakley glasses with like a croaky necklace on it, and the most Andrew Dice Clay / Affliction leather jacket covered in studs I've ever seen.
Yeah. And me got a lot of gel on that hair. Wouldn't you agree?
And look at that good looking motherfucker there. There's Eric Bischoff. Wait, hold on. I think Vince is calling on the other line. He says that WWE's on Fox. Wait, he's still talking. He says I've ruined it in record time. We gotta go.
I can't wait to see that show. I can't wait to see that show. Talk about pucker power that night. Hey, the ramp. I know you love the ramp.
I love the ramp.
Yep.
You know what? I feel like the guy from Anchorman. I love ramp. Remember he says, Steve Carell's character says, I love lamp. Well, I'm that guy for WCW. I love ramp.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start out with Steamboat and Lord Steven Regal. Steven Regal is very, very upset that they have pyro. Take a look at that winch down to my left. Yeah, and then take a look at that prick to my right. Bill Dundee, man, one of the fastest talkers in the business. You know, Bill Dundee was, we always equate, and rightfully so, Jerry the King Lawler with Memphis, but Bill was kind of an icon in Memphis as well, wasn't he?
Oh, big time.
Yeah, he really was. And of course, he also booked up with us a little bit, was part of that famous booking committee. This is where we're in a transition year here.
Oh, big time. It's not the old NWA anymore. Now it's WCW, and you had to sort of feel it out with the old guard for a little bit, but now we're transitioning into something else. JR's gone, and you're starting to get some of the big stars from the WWF. And that's really what you're going to hang your hat on for 1994. Nitro is going to change everything in 95. The NWO catches fire in 96, and we're off to the races. But this is the taint of WCW, in that it ain't the cock and nuts from Jim Crockett Promotions, and it ain't the asshole of the NWO. It's right in between. It's the taint of WCW.
It ain't the cock and the nuts, and it ain't the asshole.
It's the taint. That's why it's called taint. You didn't know about that?
No.
Yeah, the reason it's called taint is because it ain't dick and it ain't balls and it ain't asshole. It's right in the middle. It's taint. By the way, speaking of taint, here comes Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and you'll notice that that belt taint gold. That's the World Television title, and that's the one that Dave Milliken owns now and brings to some of our Starrcast events. So if you'd like to get your picture made with that belt individually, catch a Starrcast, and odds or chance it's there.
It's hard to believe. Michael Buffer opening up the event. It's hard to believe that the match that begins with Steamboat and Regal, two guys who can work, was such a shitty show. This should have been, man, right here we are, and it should have been a great match. And I guess maybe.
By the way, Ricky is 40 years old here. How good does he look for 40 years old?
I mean, it's amazing. He was always amazing.
Yeah,
40 years old there.
Yeah, 40 years old here. This is a good match.
Sure it is.
It can't not be, but Meltzer didn't necessarily love it. He gave it a 1 3/4.
Wow, a Steamboat match for 1 3/4. And take a look at the crowd.
They go long. That's the reason he didn't like it. They go 17 minutes and 5 seconds. And he even says at about 9 minutes, the match got boring.
Yeah.
Which I guess is something that, sometimes WCW would do. The matches on pay-per-view would go a little longer than they should have. How about the pockets of empty seats? Not a banner year for WCW in 1993.
Yeah. Vince would have never shown that.
No, even against the hard cam here, you can see pockets. He would have had people go collect from camera side and slide them over. Hey guys, you want to be on TV?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's just thinking ahead. And again, we talked about this being a transition period. This is a transition period, not only from old school to new school, if I could use that term, but it's also a transition from Bill Watts to Eric Bischoff too.
We should mention there was one dark match, and it was Eric Watts and Bobby Eaton. And Meltzer would say, luckily it didn't air because I was told this match would have only made a bad show worse. And the idea that they're saying that about a Bobby Eaton match tells you everything you need to know about Eric Watts. We should mention this card. Well, it's all downhill from here. We've got Charlie Norris and Big Sky coming up next. Then we got Too Cold and Marcus Bagwell, who are going to try to steal the show here. Luckily, the Equalizer and Paul Orndorff are going to stop them, Joey Janela style. Then we got Ice Train and Shanghai Pierce. Then we got the Nasty Boys, Arn Anderson and Paul Roma. Then we got Cactus Jack and Yoshi Kwan. And then we got Rick Rude and Ric Flair. And then our main event, the War Games. And the War Games has the fucking Shockmaster. So, yeah, not a great show.
Yeah. Anytime you say Shockmaster, anytime you say Equalizer, you're going to have a shitty match, man. And not only that, by this time, I don't know, everything's kind of running together, right? I mean, one shitty match after one shitty match, and you got to put them over. And fortunately, I think Jesse and I did as good as we could do on the commentary with this stuff. Because, we were both there for the intro of the Shockmaster. And so we saw that and we laughed along with it. We tried our best to, put some of these guys over, and it's what you had, man.
What you got later coming up is Tony Reed's rap, and we're going to do a double header edition this week. We got really good feedback from last week's show. I think it's the highlight for most of our listeners every week. I get such overwhelming feedback about that segment. Don't you?
Yeah, I hear a lot about it. I'm not that thrilled about doing it at times. Some songs are okay. And, although the songs we got picked up here, one of them is pretty cool.
Yeah. So before we tell you what's coming up today, we should give you a preview of what might be coming up next week. And Tony, I'm going to let you, I'm going to tell you 3 artists, and I'm going to let you pick 2, and that'll be who we do next week.
Oh, rapping wise.
Yes.
Okay.
Eminem.
Okay.
Afro Man. DJ Quick.
Well, we're definitely going to do DJ Quick.
Okay. So DJ Quick coming up next week. The name of the song is Sweet Black Pussy.
I knew that was coming.
All right. And, Afro Man or Eminem?
I'm going to go with Afro Man.
All right. So had you picked Eminem, we would have done Shake That. But since you picked Afro Man, next week we'll do DJ Quick's Sweet Black Pussy and Afro Man's Because I Got High. So that's what's coming up next week. This week, of course, later on in the show, we'll be featuring Many Men by 50 Cent and Back Then by Mike Jones.
Who?
I love that you're in on the gag now. But of course, what we got right now is 2 of the all-time greats, Lord Steven Regal. And he's trying to take that World Television Championship off of Ricky Steamboat. But the big news coming into the show, and this is really probably the thing we'll spend the most time talking about during this match, happens 4 days prior to the show at a Charlotte courthouse. How about that? The National Wrestling Alliance, which is a group of several promoters worldwide, but only one of whom at present even had a TV show, and none of them were running like a full-time promotion. They're attempting to get a temporary restraining order against WCW to keep them from advertising the Ric Flair Rick Rude match as a world heavyweight title match of any kind. The NWA believed it would, should the match and result take place as scheduled, create the idea amongst wrestling fans that Rick Rude was the NWA champion, since Rude was scheduled to win the belt, synonymous with the title, which had up until 1 week prior to the event been billed as an NWA championship. And I got to tell you, I've always been fascinated by this, because as soon as Jim Crockett Promotions is bought out by Ted Turner, it's no longer called Jim Crockett Promotions. It's called World Championship Wrestling, and they would still present themselves as NWA Wrestling, but slowly but surely that would change. We know when Flair leaves, he's going to take the big gold belt with him, They debuted the new belt that Luger and Vader and Sting and Ron Simmons and all those folks would wear. And they would call that the WCW world title. But when the big gold belt comes back, they're going to reintroduce it as the NWA world title. And here, allegedly, these handful of fucking promoters have a real problem with Rick Rude calling himself the NWA world champion. So they try to put a stop to it. And this is not when, like, the NWA at this point consists of guys like Dennis Coralluzzo. God rest his soul, not shitting on him, just saying it's not like they're making some big major run here. It's just sort of local stuff. What'd you think of this? We don't want Rick Rude. We don't want you to call it the NWA world title, and we're going to sue you to stop you.
It was, and I know I'm right here, it was a bunch of no names trying to be relevant or trying to win the lottery, trying to be a part of this. That's all it was. This is all a work. It's all a work. Now, now you can buy things. Now the NWA is a property.
Right.
But back then it wasn't. So who all was involved in aside of that one dead guy?
Well, let me continue the report here from the Observer.
Okay.
On September 1st, WCW withdrew as a member of the NWA, and the NWA board of directors, which by the NWA bylaws controls and has decision-making power over the NWA World Heavyweight title, refused to sanction the title change. And at their annual convention on September 3rd, decided to take control of the championship and create a new champion. So the deal is they wanted to say about how things happened with this belt on TV. Of course, WCW, owned by Ted Turner, is like, go fuck off. So they withdraw on the 1st, and they decide 2 days later, well, we'll just crown a new champion. By the way, no one will know because it's not on TV. It was written several of the NWA members were led to believe an out-of-court settlement was reached on principle on September 14th, when WCW led the NWA lawyer Ed Lyons to believe they were accepting the NWA's proposal that would allow WCW to go through with the Flair Rude title change, provided WCW agrees to have Rude drop the title clean to a wrestler of the NWA's choosing on an NWA house show before January 31st, 1994. That is so silly to me that WCW is like, yeah, we'll have him drop the belt to somebody somewhere eventually. Lots of other provisions in here as well, including WCW not being allowed to discredit the NWA name or title. And they're supposed to give the NWA the possession of the championship belt. Of course, they're talking about the big gold belt.
Right.
And if Rude wouldn't do the clean job to the wrestler of the NWA's choosing, then WCW would pay the NWA $100,000 per day in damages. Of course, early the next morning, the NWA lawyers were told that there might be a problem because WCW was concerned that Rude wouldn't agree to do the job. And obviously, if that was the case, the price in that daily penalty was just way too steep. The counteroffer was made that the Flair Rude match would be billed simply as for the World Heavyweight title, and the result of the match would go as planned. And then on the broadcast, the announcers would read a disclaimer that this wasn't an NWA World Heavyweight title match, and the National Wrestling Alliance did not sanction this event as a title match, which apparently the NWA was still willing to accept. Later that morning, WCW pulled out of negotiating a settlement and announced that it had hired Faison Hicks to represent them in court for the temporary restraining order scheduled for that afternoon. And Hicks had represented both the NWA and WCW in a 91 case against Vince McMahon and won. And of course, this is when it was taken to court that Rick couldn't wear the big gold belt on WWE TV, which is just, I mean, it is the most storied belt in history because of all this, shenanigans that's happened with here, the WWE and the NWA and WCW craziness. What do you remember about this? What were you hearing about it at the time?
The only thing I heard about it, and the only thing that we did, every time we heard about it, we rolled our eyes. We kind of rolled our eyes to the fact that do you think Vince would have paid attention to this?
Fuck
lawsuit?
No.
WCW back in the day was settlement crazy. I mean, if you sued them, oh my God, we better do something about it. We all thought it was a joke. And, Conrad, it was a joke. Come on.
Yeah.
$100,000 a day. First of all, I laugh at an NWA convention.
Right.
I mean, what's the NWA convention? It's going to be what? 4 guys sitting around a table?
Yeah. In 93, you mean not 1983, but 93.
Right. So we all thought it was a joke. And on as far as everybody who was performing was concerned, we didn't pay attention to it at all. So what finally happened? I don't even know what finally happened.
Well, you know what happened. They told them to fucking suck a root.
Right. That's what they should have done at the beginning. So suck a root. I love that term.
It's just silly, man, that this is.
Yeah, it's bullshit. It's wrestling bullshit. It's all it is. Jim Crockett made the NWA more relevant on a national level than any other promoter. Made it more relevant. And thus when he went on TBS, and thus WCW made it more relevant than any other.
We should mention that the NWA did have plans for who would have hypothetically been the person to beat Rude and become the new NWA World Champion.
Oh, really?
At the convention, they discussed 3 names: Road Warrior Hawk, Terry Funk, and Ted DiBiase. And that leaks out to the Observer and the Torch. And a lot of the NWA members are pissed off that that's now been made public. WCW reopened negotiations with Hawk and DiBiase once this is printed. And they're having serious talks back and forth, including DiBiase wanted $125,000 for 100 dates with WCW, and WCW didn't want to make that commitment, which I got to tell you, in 1993, fucking Ted DiBiase's worth $125,000 all day.
Yes, he is.
I mean, my gosh.
I know.
I think that's like the most reasonable contract request I may have ever seen.
That's right.
Like Ted DiBiase today in 2019 is worth 125, and he ain't even wrestling. Just
that's right.
Go stand over there, Mr. DiBiase. Here's your money. I don't know that we've talked about that, but here's a little peek behind the curtain. I've used Ted DiBiase once at a Starrcast. Huge success. Like, I don't know what it is, but guys like Ted DiBiase and Jimmy Hart, big line everywhere they go. If you grew up on those guys, you want to meet them, and people are not disappointed. Highly recommend, if you're listening to this and you're a promoter, you book a Ted DiBiase or a Jimmy Hart.
I agree. And not only that, I think you go back and you take a look at what the $1 Million Man meant to the WWE back then. The angle, the $1 Million Man angle with the selling of the belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the best angle ever to me.
Yeah, I agree. Me and Bruce have covered that.
Yeah.
The main event angle with the double referee gimmick. And we still think it's one of the best things of all time. And by the way, Meltzer agreed with us here. He says WCW didn't want to make that commitment, which should tell you something about the future contract negotiations with a lot of wrestlers, because there aren't a lot of DiBiase caliber performers in this country.
And it was Eric Bischoff doing the negotiating back then, wasn't it?
I don't think so.
It wasn't?
Okay. No, I don't think so.
All right.
You do?
Well, he wasn't running the company. Well, he was running the company back then, wasn't he?
I don't know that he was doing it at this point.
Okay.
I mean, I'm saying he was like in charge of television, I think. I don't think he was like.
All right.
I could be wrong.
This was the 3-headed monster we had back then.
We should mention that it's 1994 when he's promoted from executive producer to executive vice president, which put him in charge of everything. So that's the next year. So I think here in 93, he's still, working his way up the ladder.
I think we had, if I recall, if I'm right back at this time, we had Olli Anderson in charge of wrestling, Sharon Sadello in charge of marketing, and Eric in charge, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Eric in charge of TV. So this would have been Olli Anderson not wanting to pay. And I can see that because he was title fucker.
Well, and Olli Anderson's the guy who famously told Ric Flair after he lost a loser leaves town match to Kurt on Raw, Well, what good are you to me now since you just lost on TV?
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine asking Ric Flair in 93, what good are you now? Are you fucking serious, bro?
Yeah.
Just on WrestleMania. I'm pretty useful.
Well, look, Olli never liked Flair ever. So
no, there was a great clip of him doing an interview years ago where he says that Flair was the shits and Flair couldn't work. And it was the same goddamn match every time. And Flair thought it was only a good match if it was a long match. He had to have every match be the fucking longest match. And he would go out through the curtain and just yell, hurry the fuck up. And, you know, just yell, go home and shit like that. And of course that annoyed Flair because he thought he wanted to give the people their money's worth and wanted the performance to keep going. And there's two different styles. Well, eventually Olli would say in some shoot interview somewhere, that's why I made him the goddamn champion, just to get him out of our fucking territory. Cause the champion had to go work all these other territories and then he'd get the fuck out of here. If I just give him the belt, he'd have to leave.
Oh, that sounds like Olli Anderson, buddy.
I just thought it was great. I got tired of that motherfucker, so I made him champion so he'd leave. So it just tickled me.
Yeah, that's you had to know Olli. That's all him, man. That was all him. I wonder how he's doing. As on we go into the future in pro wrestling, take a look at this now. How long have they been going? They got to be close to their finish here. There it is. That's got to be it. No, that's not it.
17 minutes is going to be what we're looking at for the finish. We should mention this got the second best match, according to the readers of the Observer. Number one in a runaway is Flair Rick Rude. And then with about a third of the votes, Steamboat Regal is second.
Okay.
No debating what the worst match is, though. It's anything with fucking Ice Train.
Mm.
What do you think Ice Train's doing these days?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything about him. I'd be interested to find out, though. You know, maybe DDP knows.
He knows everything.
I know he does. There's your finish. 1, 2, 3. Give me the belt. He is still the champion, or he is the new champion.
Ice Train, by the way, debuted with you guys in June. And this is his pay-per-view debut here.
That's how we should have announced it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a one fall match. In this corner, Ice Train. And his opponent making his way to the ring. It doesn't fucking matter. It's going to be a lousy match. Come on down. Wouldn't that have been cool?
Man, how ahead of the... Look at that. I love that. Bill Dundee with the cane shot.
Yep.
Right after Ricky got to skin the cat and show off that athleticism so late in the match. German suplex. Little bridge. Gets the shoulder up. There's your finish. And new television champion. I got to tell you, it made Regal look like a badass, but a villain, and he had to cheat. And it told a good story with Steamboat.
Tony's back with Conrad, not your classy podcast. Watch along, try not to laugh. Lowest rules can't pass. This wasn't the initial plan. Tom Zigg's a good-looking man. Klondike Bill, make a chip. Tommy, you come over here.